Okay, let's get started. So, thank you for showing up first. So, we start these things right at the beginning. Where were you born?
In Camrose, Alberta. I'm a farm boy from central Alberta.
Ooh.
61 years ago.
61 years ago. Brothers and sisters?
I'm the oldest son of four kids, and I've got two brothers. One brother that's in the Stampede right now in the penning contest for the horses, and one younger sister, that's my baby sister.
So, you grew up in Camrose. Did that give you, I'm trying to lead to where entrepreneurship came in, but work ethic is going to come along here too.
Right.
So, you talk to that a little bit?
Grew up in a farm community, and everything is work. Some school, and if you're into sports at all, like I was with hockey and ball, then that was the only sort of extra thing you did at that time.
Right.
Remember driving my little Honda 65 back in those days into town to go play sports, and that's what I used to do. And so we played a lot of hockey, played in juvenile hockey leagues in central Alberta, and so that was my life and entertainment. At work, at home, it was work, combining and farming and with the cattle, and I couldn't wait to get out of there when I was 18 and just graduated. Then there was time to move to the big city. My other brothers were the farmers in the family, but I wasn't. And probably my work ethic, my dad, he's the one that told me when I left to go to actually work for the Royal Bank. He said, and it's probably wise advice for back then, he says, never look at the clock. That's my advice. Do the work and never look at the clock. And my wife probably now says she wishes I would look at the clock once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's my early advice.
So you head to the big city, so I'm assuming that's Calgary?
Actually, it was Edmonton. I went to Edmonton. We're closer, Camrose is closer to Edmonton. I went there. I went to the Royal Bank. One of my first interviews was at an accounting company, a company called Pete Marwick. Back in those days, the salary for an articling accountant was $275 a month. And I figured I can't do that, and I can't be an accountant. Okay, so I went to look at the Royal Bank. They hired me, and but they stuck me out in Drayton Valley.
Okay.
So I moved me out to Drayton Valley. That's where my first year was there. And I was making $400 a month back then, $350 a month, so I got an increase. Yeah. And was there for a year before they then transferred me to Calgary, which is how I got to Calgary. And that's, so in 1971 is when I moved to Calgary.
So you're working as an accountant or in a bank, and then how do you become a cop?
It was interesting. I was a young farm boy, just into the big city. I'd never really been much in the big city. Happened to be going downtown to the library. Remember the library in those days? And, right, okay.
Yeah,
and,
a little bit, yeah.
And so happened to go past the street. The library is right next to the police station. I was going along, a 19-year-old kid walked in and started talking to the guy, curious, and asked, how'd you like your job? What do you do? And the sergeant at the time said that the starting wage for the police was going to be $714 a month. So I was almost double. He says, oh, I might be interested. I can cut my hair. Okay, so I applied, and at 20 in 1 week, I became the youngest policeman in Calgary for many, many years. So I was, as my wife would say, a dangerous 20-year-old walking around Calgary with a gun on my hip.
Wow. So where did we go after that?
Well, where do you want to go?
Well, I'm trying to get to Kelowna eventually.
Yeah, so I was a policeman from 72 to 78. I loved the job. I loved the work. I loved interacting with the community. At that time, zone policing was just coming into being. So you'd but you'd work in an area of geographic region of the city, and you get to know the people, get to know the bad guys, the good guys, all the people that were there, and that was like it's called zone policing for a reason, right? And so. But at the time I was married in 74, and we had already started. I guess I was a wannabe entrepreneur back then. I had a backhoe business, 20 guys working for me installing gas lines and electrical lines as a part-time job. I started a restaurant, a 100-seat restaurant in Airdrie, Alberta. We're building some houses. I was working in some other businesses here, so I was doing a number of things. And police work is very shift work orientated, and it's very set and determined. And then in '78, I joined the fire department because the fire department had better shifts. You'd work 10-hour day shifts, 14-hour night shifts, but you can sleep on the off times, and then you'd have 4 days off. So in '78, I became a fireman in Calgary. Another great job, fantastic job. It's and very, very few people ever leave that area, leave that job. And in 81, actually 80, we were involved in a multi-level direct sales business. Again, I didn't think I was a salesman, but I started in a multi-level company. It was a company like Amway, but it wasn't Amway, it was another one.
Yeah.
And they were looking for somebody to open up the interior of BC, and we moved out to BC, and immediately everything went wrong. Got out here, just bought a house in a lot, interest rates jumped to 22%. The National Energy Program was coming in the West, and it was a tough time period. And '83, I got into technology. That's when I needed a job, and I started looking for a job, and started selling for somebody else.
But you're not a technology guy, right?
No, I had my first computer was a Radio Shack Model 3, but I can't claim to be a techie. Once in my career, one programmer allowed me to type in 2 words, so I could claim that I did something to the code in one program, but I have no clue what that was. Okay, but no, I'm not a technologist.
So what was the allure to the technology job in '83?
Back in '83, it was needing a job, and I got to meet a company here in town that at the time was called Business World. They were just getting into the computer world. They were more in photocopiers, but they're getting computers, selling the Wang computers. Yep. And they're needing somebody to help sell them. And in fact, one of the audience members, his dad was involved back then. Okay, so we got selling specialty systems. Right. And I got selling complete systems for McDonald's restaurants, the owner-operators. Yeah. The first store was sold here in town, and from there went to North America, sold 450 owner-operators in North America, a staff scheduling, payroll, food costing system for restaurants. Awesome.
So that experience of selling and really selling something that was a cost management system, so you're seeing how the company's benefiting from it, right? How did that resonate with you?
Well, I read a book on McDonald's when I was starting to sell into McDonald's, and the first sale we made, which is just up the street here, they asked me, frankly, it was by accident. Yep. We sold them the hardware, and then several months later they found a software package from Ontario, and they asked for help getting it installed. And so I went there to help them, and I said, what's this program do? What's this staff scheduling supposed to do? And he said, Al, if this thing works like the guys who sold it to us says it does, this thing will pay for itself in 2 months. I said, really? Okay, so then I, curious mind, I called the programmer in Ontario, and I said, how can I get involved? How can I help? I'm prepared to sell it and go out there. So it's the ability to think of something from a sales perspective that got me interested. Yeah. I have to believe that this, whatever you're developing, is worth something, that I can sell it, because I can't build it. Right. But if I can sell it or bring the support structure around it to actually help sell that part of it here, then that was my gig. Okay. And so with a very small, 2-person backup team that was helping me install it, we sold literally 450 owner-operators across North America. Wow. With that complete system. So that was quite an adventure to learn staff scheduling. And for me at the time, we had to learn how to, at the time, most kids' first job was McDonald's. Today you got fancier restaurants to work at, and the Starbucks and elsewhere. But back in those days, McDonald's was quite a place to, and it still is, a good place to work there. But I read a book about Ray Kroc, and it's it's the business side of McDonald's, right? And it's called McDonaldizing suppliers. So I was a supplier to the McDonald's, and I had to figure out how I would think and act and look so that I would know so much about their business, even though I was a rookie in that field, that they thought I was McDonald's. Right. And our success came when they could not, they thought I was McDonald's. They thought I was corporate McDonald's going into our store, right? And showing them how to work with it, right? And so that was my first little tidbit of, this is what it's about. And you have to understand the business. Right. And all 3 of my kids and my daughter-in-law has worked at McDonald's, and I learned the system, and it's been good for them.
Good. So this takes us to when? Late 80s?
Yeah, late 80s, 87 in fact. And then at the time, the BC government just mandated that all the doctors in my company, the primary product was a dental system for dentist offices. But in 88, then the BC government mandated that billings, instead of being on the cards, would be done electronic, and it was mandated to get everybody on it in a year and a half, that it was compulsory.
Right.
So suddenly, our company decided to build a billing system for doctors. After all, how hard could that be when we're already doing it for dentists, right? And so, and at the time, I remember there was 18 companies in BC that were doing billings for about 7,000, 8,000 doctors at the time. And I said, 18 of us, so maybe there's 20 of us, divide that by 8,000 doctors, yeah, there's plenty of opportunity. And 6 months later, there was 104 companies in this space, all fighting for these 8,000 doctors.
Right.
And it was interesting to see the law of the 80-20 rule. You know, the people that had 80% of the business, or the group of customers that had 80%, right. 10, 15 years later still had that same sort of 80%.
Yeah.
And but we succeeded at getting a product started, and got about 450 doctors. I don't know if 450 doctors sticks out, but I mean that was 450 doctors in BC. And then by 81, it was over. There was nothing. There's nothing left. Pardon me. 91. Okay. That it was every doctor that wanted one of those systems had one from somebody.
Right.
And so the market was saturated, and then. My partner, okay, at the time, and in fact that's that guy's dad, okay, back there, said to me, "El, you're probably going to have to think about working for somebody that believes in that product as much as you do, or more." And at the time, I wasn't getting that at that particular. They weren't into that zone and that space as much. So I went on my own. Had no clue what I was going to get into. I knew I was going to do something in healthcare. And that's when I wanted to do something that'll handle systems, and that's where my name at that time, Total and Care, came up. Before I had a product. But I said I was going to find something and see if I can do something in this space.
So how do you go about starting that process?
Again, being curious and looking for others, looking for the best in others, looking for ideas. I ran across somebody that they were developing a staff scheduling system at the Kelowna Hospital. It was the first project that the BCIT ARCS Lab did. It was their first spin-out. Back in those days, there weren't that many. And they were looking for somebody to take the product over and start taking it on. And that's what I did. So taking a product, and I believe it was the world's first graphical staff scheduling system. We've never seen another one early. This is DOS days, you know, and fully graphical system in use for the art of staff scheduling, and that's how I got into the staff scheduling world. Okay. And my second go around, right?
And so, how did you go about starting to go after the business, building the team, all that type of stuff?
Well, it was interesting because we thought we had a good product, but it was a single user DOS-based system, no real database, had to be rewritten in, you know, back in those days, DB Rama and then SQL later on. You know, but there was hospitals that were interested in the staff scheduling, especially the nursing department. And so I started getting some customers. You know, I remember selling my first system to the Cranbrook Hospital. That's a long drive. And I promised them all the training they would want for $1,000. And I must have went there 15, 20 times, okay, for that $1,000. And but that's where I learned. I learned their business. I learned what took place in that area, and a lot of sacrifice getting on. But that's how we started, and one thing led to the other. Referencing is big, as there is in most businesses. And started a business that by 2000 and 2001 was a $10 million business. It didn't happen instantly. It took quite a while to get the first number of revenues going. Me and my wife mortgaged everything we had. We had 6 visas at the time going back and forth. That was before the days of online transactions. And it was really a bootstrap enterprise that I remember taking only $10,000 a month out from 1991, probably $10,000 a year from 91 to about 96 when some money started coming in.
Started flowing.
And had a U.S. business that picked up our product and started selling it down there.
So you say you're not a technical guy, but it sounds like you go out and meet with the customers, you find the needs, Did you shape the product? Did you advise the development team what to build?
You learn what a product is or isn't by the question that a customer asks.
Right.
So if you, in our business today, we have a lot of RFPs, requests for proposals, and what ends up happening is they ask questions, and you know that those questions are functions and features that are not in our current system.
Right.
So that you learn from about your competitors by what's not there. And so then you obviously got to take it to your team and see if they can do it and develop it. But I can't say that I've ever been one that says it has to have this or has to have this.
Mm-hmm.
I just keep on showing them the stuff and find good people and they make it happen.
So one of the unique things with your company is that it, from the other people that have been here for Entrepreneurs Unplugged, is you went public.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
So in 1999, the industry was in a Y2K craze. Everybody that could spell old code was getting very good wages to try to fix old systems as they were transitioning into the Y2K era.
Right.
I started the business we're at today, and in fact the company name was very similar to what says New Horizon back there. I see your New Horizons on your sweater there, but the company, I started a payroll company. Got my loan, my first loan for that company from my landlord, Al Stober. He's in town here, and got a loan for $250,000 to start that business in '97. By '99, we knew we had something. We had some beginning product that was going to clients and getting it installed, and I had zero capacity to raise funds and compete with the industry on options and the incentives. Remember, in those days, the option value was going crazy in that area. So October '99, we signed an agreement to go public. It was done just at the time where the Canadian Venture Exchange was starting. Yep. And it took us till June of 2000 to go public, and on June 28th, we went public through a reverse takeover, and then we started learning what public was all about.
Yeah. So how did that go?
Well, the people that were smarter than us in the venture on the public side, the ones that already are in the public marketplace and don't have to deal with things like escrowed shares, they know how to trade. Yeah. You know, our stock was trading an average of $1.70 for the first 6 months. Well, these guys were trading their stock and making lots of money. And meanwhile, us that are the founders or the beginners have got a 5-year escrow agreement and can't do nothing. We just hope that someday that's going to be our value. And then, as you all remember, 2001 came along, and the industry and .com and Nortel and all those things started going the wrong way. And so, but an important lesson for me during that time period, we had to really concentrate in 2001 onward of getting real revenues from real customers, because there may not be an investor backing you at that time. Right. So we made a decision to service the heck out of the customers. Think of it like rent. Think of it like money coming in every month. And if you don't earn it, it's not coming your way. Right. And so I think that's always, put us in good stead in that area. We've, since we started on our own business, in the two ventures that I've been involved with, we're probably at about $120 million of total sales in that span of life here, and but it's real money from real customers. Right.
How is the public reporting and the public scrutiny, I guess, is the better way to do it? When you have a bad quarter, when you're private, you can go, oh, we're working on some things. When it's public, it's on a PDF on a website.
Yeah, it's an interesting part. When you go public initially, you're a lot of cases you're given some latitude, some leeway. They're investing in you because they believe in the story. Right. But that lasts for a quarter or two. And then the realities of what they expected to make on this thing is going to hit home. Yeah. It depends on also how you sell it. If you sell it that you're going to be $100 million company in no time, and if you got your hockey stick projections on your diagrams and investor presentations, expect that'll come back on you. Right. So I think it depends on what level you're at. Like, we were a very infant company in a very small space that not a lot of people knew about. Right. And had some dedicated shareholders that joined us at that point, and they believed in the long-term strategy. And it just, you've got to go with the flow. But the rules have changed. After the Enrons, we went public pre-Enron and WorldCom and all those things. So I'd say in the mid, 2005, 2007 time period, it changed quite a bit. Fortunately for us, our revenue started growing at the same time. And so we're given some latitude, and we did some acquisitions. We've done now 13 acquisitions in the last 13 years since being public. And currently, we're in the mid-$30 million range of a business.
Did going public give you, was it easier to recruit employees, easier to do those acquisitions, or harder?
Back in the early days, it was definitely a way you could use things like options to your advantage to attract people.
Right.
If you remember what that was like in those days, and I remember one of the decisions we made why we wanted to go public. In my previous business, which I'd already, including this one here, in September of 98, we had 44 employees. In March of 99, we had 125. Most of them were recruited from out of town into this town. They come from all over because we did not have enough people here. And one of the drawbacks to coming here at that time was, well, if something doesn't work out at your company, where else can I go? Where else can I work at, right?
Right.
And that was our biggest problem back in those days. Finding work for the spouses come along if it was a family situation, which is still a problem we got today in this community, right?
Sure.
As far as finding the other jobs. But that was our biggest problem: is what if I don't make it with you? What else can happen? And so I think that so that was in the early days. In the later days, it's the only way you can really raise money unless you find some angel investors.
Yeah.
And I would say that we went public very, very early. We're a $1 million business and already public. And I wouldn't look at that today unless you're at least a $10 or $15 million business before you look at possibly going public.
I'd heard or read something that it's roughly $500,000 a year just for the public vehicle.
Yes, I would say at least that.
Yeah.
At this point here, when you consider directors' fees, auditors, lawyers, all that kind of stuff that's here. So I mean, that can eat away at that, and
Pretty quick.
Everybody that's an expert that can bill you by the hour doesn't stop billing,
Right.
especially when you get into trouble.
Yeah.
So that's when the fees go up, and that's usually not a time when you can afford it.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about board of directors.
Okay.
How'd that go?
Well, we've always had, again, it depends on what you're looking for. Some public companies have a very close-knit group of people or their friends. It's they're key investors. They're not going to raise a ruckus because they're both an investor and a manager on the board. But if you're truly running a good public company that will attract the attention of others worldwide at some point, you got to look for the independent guys that have been there, done that may, they won't just do what the CEO wants to do. They'll do it because it's on behalf of the shareholders, and there's increasing scrutiny on shareholder control, right? The directors being independent. And currently, I have a chairman. It's public information. His name is Gordon Glenn, out of Jacksonville, Florida. His claim to fame is he started one company that took it up to $250 million out of the U.S. Then he was recruited by a Canadian company. That was a $10 million business back in the late 90s. By the time he retired in 99, it was a $600 million business.
Wow.
Today, that company is worth many billions of dollars. So that's a world-class type of an individual to attract to your board. And those type of people are not yes men. Exactly. So you got to learn to work with the people. You got to understand they're doing the right things for the company, and they'll also be able to help you along. Right. Giving you advice that, oh man, I wish I could know those things, but they're living off the experiences of what they've got when you're a $600 million business and you're a 10 or 20 or $30 million business, and you're trying to keep up. Sure. So
as CEO though, especially when you're, let's say, $10 million and you're getting that type of talent that's coming in and having them on your board, that's pretty intimidating.
It can be. Yeah. And again, that's you have to make a conscious decision. Are you going to go for the easy guys that are going to be friendly all the time and not say nothing, but they'll also fund you when you need to? Right. Or are you going to take it seriously and become a world-class board that at some point will stand the scrutiny of other people when they come and look at whether it's acquisition or partnerships or serious players. So,
did you have any tipping points in the last 13 years or so, or any sort of crisis points that you look back and go, that was a tight one?
Yeah, I would say that the first, 6 or 8 years of our public venture, it was a tight battle. And as your business gets bigger, the paychecks keep on coming faster and faster. Not yours, but everybody else's.
Right.
And you got to think about that more often, right? Because the payroll, at least myself, I don't see my money at home. I don't see my money at work. But you got to keep on working hard to make it come in. And you know, the entrepreneurs I've met and talked with, and I know my own thinking is, the bulk of what you think about is, can I pay my people? Can I pay my people? Can I, you know, can I, you know, how far do I go, you know, in terms of what I can go, and how tight, you know, do I not want to get into, right?
Right.
Okay, that's probably one of the biggest things that keeps you awake at night.
So what did you do, or techniques did you apply to help you grow as a CEO during that period?
I think probably my growth came as a result of problems that you have to work through.
Right.
Not always will things at the board level be always going well. So if you think of any volunteer organization, you've got a bunch of experts that are giving you advice, but they're not living that day to day. They're not living it, you know, every single day, every single hour. They're not thinking about it. But when they come in, they're your experts. They're your bosses. And I've had some challenges over the years, and at the board. Not now, okay. Things are going well with our board, but I can tell you that I've had some of my biggest challenges came from the inside, and not the outside. You expect your competitors to beat you up. You expect competition to not happen and not everything happen. But sometimes the challenges come from within, whether it's a family or your work family or some of those things. That's when it's tough to deal with. And you got to work through it.
That was my next question. Is on the recruiting side, has there been challenges from, especially that senior talent, not just at the board level, but the next step down in the officer level and the director level, that has been difficult to get people to come to Kelowna?
No, and we, by the way, just like I explained, we have about 250 employees right now, 255 employees. We got 25 in the States, just through our recent acquisition we made down there. We've got about 70 in Ontario, a dozen in Winnipeg, and a dozen in Calgary, and then about 130 here. I hope that adds up, right? Okay, but something like that. Okay. So most of our recruiting happened elsewhere in the last couple of years. Most of our business is Ontario. 75% of our business is Ontario and Manitoba, right? So one of the odd things about business, and just another thing you should learn too, especially as a startup company, is the local people will not always have your best interests at heart. There's a biblical saying is, you're not a prophet in your own town. And you can be an expert from out of town, and people will believe the expert from out of town far more than will local. Right. Because people want you to do good, but not too good, because you could get ahead of them, right? Yeah. And so find your star clients, find them no matter where they are, but don't count on the locals being your best. You may be lucky, but most of our business was elsewhere. Right. In fact, out of the province. So we like it here, we live here, we work here, but 90% of our business is not in BC.
Are you doing a large push into the U.S. now?
Just with our recent acquisition we did in October, we're in the healthcare business, so healthcare software for the doctors. Our U.S. business has expanded it to deal with the payers and providers in the state level. Down there, here in Canada, it's a single payer system, MSP here, over in Ontario. There, you got thousands of insurance companies, and it's as one CEO of one company down there told me, it's a frickin' mess down here. Okay, but that's the business he's in, and that's actually good. Yeah. Because when there's confusion and chaos and lots of data and lots of mismanaged stuff that's going on there, lots of fraud, how they're doing the billing, it's like an average doctor will make considerably more money in the U.S., but the average person also pays a lot more for healthcare down there. And our job is to try to match those together and as they put controls in place.
If you were going to go back and do it all over again, what would you do different?
I would probably, well, again, it's back when I started my business, there were, I don't know of a single person in town that was in this business as early as I was. I think the guys from Baden were around a couple of years before I was in town here. So there wasn't the success at a business technology that somebody spun out and sold off and then reinvested that, like you'll get in Ottawa, like the second generation entrepreneurs in Ottawa, certain Terry Matthews and those guys that have had a big success and then come back in the industry as funders and angel investors. That didn't exist here.
Right.
So I think today, new ones starting up, I would find myself that close in angel type investor that really believes in the technology and in you and will mentor you. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is start trying to run a business like the bigger companies do. Use the controls of the public marketplace, even if you're not public. Use the governance issues. Use the mechanisms for getting, great accounting going and all of the system as if you were, 20 times bigger than you really are.
Yep.
But find somebody that believes in you, and you need that. Otherwise, you'll be running a very lonely life, trying to figure it out on your own.
Agreed. I used to say, act like a real company.
Yeah.
It's the same way.
I used to say before I was public, fake it until you make it. But when I was public, I was told you can't say that no more. So, okay. So, but
probably say it once.
And on the internet age and the business, the advantage that the younger companies that are getting started have today is unbelievable, because if you're really good at what your website looks like and what your business looks like, and you can act and feel and smell and look and not smell, but look like the bigger companies, you have a shot at competing against the bigger. We're competing right now in the U.S. with companies that got hundreds of millions of dollars of contracts, and we've got a potential down there, right? So we can't talk about it yet, but we got a shot against those big companies.
When was the point, and if this may be a difficult question to answer, but there's usually a point when you're going down the road with the company that all of a sudden you go, I haven't really made it yet, but I think we're close. I'm no longer in crisis. Did you have one of those?
In the fall of 2010, we decided we needed to find some additional capital. We'd done a couple of acquisitions, had some debt, not major debt, but enough debt to think about it on a regular basis, and we decided to go out and raise some funds. Right. And at the time, we went out and raised $8 million on the TSX venture, and worked exceedingly hard to get that from September until December 22nd. And I can tell you, on December 23rd, when an $8 million check was just in the bank, and we're able to pay off a bunch of things like shareholder loans, I think that day we felt pretty good about our position, right? And we were targeting another acquisition, which ended up happening the following September. So we had the money for that one already. So that was, I would say at that time, we felt we're on the good rate. And then life happens and moves along, and pretty soon you're a year later in that acquisition, and things don't all work out exactly like you thought they would. Right. And then you go back to the same challenges again, like how are we going to build our business, especially because we moved out to Ontario and we took on 34 staff twice, 2 different acquisitions with 34 staff at once, and then have to try to learn their business.
So when an acquisition's done, do you migrate them into your company, into the fold, or do you run them as separate business units?
It depends on the product. We've got one part of our business is payroll, HR, scheduling. That's what we call the EMS division, and that's pretty steady business, $10 to $12 million a year business type in healthcare hospitals across the country. The EMR business has gone from 2004 being $189,000 a year business to this year. Public information will be above the $20 million mark in that time period. So it's a real hockey stick with real revenues, not a projection. It's actually happened. And so I think just building that business out and continuing growth and keep on hitting the expectations and keeping the expectations in check is one of my biggest challenges. No, I don't think I've quite answered your question there, but I mean, I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges is how do you get it going and then get ready for the next curve, because you just don't know when something is going to come along that is interesting, and sometimes you will do it, sometimes you don't. In our recent past, we've always erred on the side of bringing everybody in that was there. Everybody that wanted to be there at the company by the time we took it over. Remember, most of the companies we've taken over actually were in financial or technology or management disarray. So there weren't a lot of strong owners left. There weren't a lot of strong people, but we took everybody who was there. And then you find out in life that Not everybody needs to be there,
Right.
and they move on. And sometimes you have to make those decisions to make them move on, because it just isn't. They have to fit the culture, and if they don't, then they have to move
it doesn't
on.
work out. What do you look for in an acquisition? Is there anything that jumps out at you?
Today, we would look for a business that is, again, go back to most of the acquisitions we've been involved with have had a start of a technology or an end-of-life issue.
Yeah.
They've had a financial distress. They're in trouble financially. They're not making money, they're losing money, they're in debt. And the shareholders, owners, managers went out. So usually all three of those things have occurred. So you're buying a company by the very nature is already in disrepair.
Right.
It's not like the recent Kelowna story with Club Penguin Act. That was a growth story. It was going unbelievable, right?
Sure.
So our acquisitions have been problem situations, but we wouldn't have been able to afford them if they were a screaming success. They wouldn't have been for sale if they were a screaming success, right? So we have to take the good and bad and work with it, and because we have a product that replaces their product, we can eventually get rid of their developers and move our product. And we're very fortunate that here right in this town, three university students at UBC here started in 2002 developing a product for a local doctor. And in 2004, we were able to acquire that product, and I saw the product in January 14, 2004. And I said, this is good stuff. This is good looking software. And today it's still our leading product. We believe it's a leading product in the country. We have about 9,000 doctors on our systems now. So, and I can tell you, 5 years ago, I set my sights on maybe someday when I'm close to retirement, having 5,000 doctors. That would be screaming success if we could get to 5,000. And now we've blown past that and looking to double that figure. So.
Now, TELUS has come into your space in the last few years, haven't they? Mm-hmm. Making all sorts of claims and doing all sorts of wonderful things.
Yeah, and a phone company has, first of all, one thing, they do have lots of cash.
Yeah.
In most telcos, doesn't matter if it's Rogers or TELUS or Bell, they're looking for things to fill their pipes, fill the lines, in healthcare, as TELUS's mission was to go after healthcare, is to find the data. Find the data coming from the doctor's office to the hospitals, and they're about making money on the data.
Yeah.
So we compete well with them. They've done a number of acquisitions. They've bought 3 EMR companies, which is our space, electronic medical records, for $75 million. And that's what they paid at this point here, and that bought them 9,000 doctors. Now, we didn't have the $75 million, so we had to earn it the hard way.
Right.
And had some money, but most of it through sales efforts. But I just don't believe that the big companies are good developers. In fact, any of the companies here, as soon as you get bigger, you get a little bit too big and your productivity slows down. You won't be the same. So we're not afraid of them as a development company or a product company. And we just have to out-hustle them and outwork them. So.
If you had one word to describe yourself, what would it be? Should I ask your wife?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. Can I use a hyphen?
Of course.
Okay.
You can hyphen as long as you want to.
Well, I thought of 2 words, but I can't think of one. Okay. I would think my mother would say I'm the most positive person she's known, but that's what mothers are supposed to say. Yeah. I would say forever optimistic. If I can get those 2 words into one, right? I think I've had tough days. We've had ups and downs in our business, like unbelievable over the last 25 years, right? And I can truly say that I've never ever woken up in the morning and said, "Shoot, I have to go to work today." I've never felt that way. I've always I use it as my motto.
Yeah.
CEO is creating every opportunity.
Yeah.
But more importantly, is constantly encouraging others.
Absolutely.
And you don't do that sitting at home. And so I've always gone to work, and my wife thinks that I would be retired if I was only working 8 to 4, Monday to Friday. And but I love the work. I love being around people, and I really like hiring the younger people, the new people, the new life into the business. That's what I like. So far this year we've hired 38 new people across the country. 20 of them were replacement positions because of the acquisition.
Right.
But we've hired 38 people so far this year. And I love seeing the new people come into the business.
You're a spry 61.
Yep.
So what's the plan for after this?
Well, it's no secret of our position in the company, you know, as you grow, especially when you go to the 10 to the 30, and then you set your sights as we have for the $100 million mark. I'm personally starting the process of looking for who's next at our company, because we need to have that people that have been there, done that. It's far easier to get to the $100 million level listening and working with people that have been at the $200 million level or $1 billion level,
Right.
than it is to inch our way upward. And so I am actively looking for and talking to people that I'm hoping will someday replace me. And I don't have a problem with that. A lot of founders do. A lot of founders that develop their technology, and they have a tough time in giving up their baby and their technology, have a problem, but I don't. And so I think for me, you know, not that I'm looking at retiring, but having somebody else push it and drive the business to the next level is what I'd be looking for. Mm-hmm. And then in this community or elsewhere that we're involved with projects, I'd like to maybe give back a little bit more, or be an advisor to companies or private companies, you know, anybody that is looking for help. Because over 30 years, you sort of develop a lot of contacts, a lot of connections, a lot of what not to do. You can spot stuff that somebody else doesn't see yet.
Right.
And remember, like I said about the guy that's running a $600 business,
Exactly.
He knows problems that I don't see yet today.
Right.
Well, the same way when you're getting started. And, you know, when young companies are getting started, sometimes you don't need the big dollars. You just need the next few dollars. That somebody says, well, I don't exactly know what you're doing, but I think I believe in you, and I'm willing to put up some money if you can get 3 others to do the same. And then, oh, if you're going to do it, then I'm going to do it. Because the worst thing for an entrepreneur that's strapped and has got 0 money, he's got no opportunity to make any errors.
Yeah.
And yet you know he's going to make errors.
Yeah. No wiggle room.
You know? And so sometimes just like, you know, as my public story is, as I said earlier, my first loan came from Al Stover. I think I paid him off in 1999, okay? And I've since, he's made very good money on that investment by us being a long-term tenant
Of course.
of the business, right? So.
And you're moving over to Landmark 6?
Yeah, we should be in there by late December, early January. We've got 3 floors, 3 contiguous floors that we're bringing together. Right now we got got 12,000 square feet in Landmark 3 and 2 floors in Landmark 5, and it's not together. We got to have the contact points and bring everybody more together. So we've got 3 floors that we're building out there.
Cool. All righty. Let me turn it out here for any questions from these guys. Go ahead.
Back in the early days of the startup, you're building a software. How far out can your sort of commercial sales process be? So were you out there going to find customers and then having the developers build to what you were finding out? Like how are you sort of balancing that?
At the very early stages of our very first scheduling system, it was brand new concept, and people the early adopters were more forgiving, and they would be willing to go, but they got a cheaper price, but they also got the input mechanisms of if they believed in what you're going to do, right? So it depends on what stage your product is at and where the consumer is at versus what else they can buy. So if you're just starting off in an HR application and there's, you know, let's say an example, building a recruiting system, and you know, Taleo and all the other companies have already got a system, you've got a tough job because somebody's ahead of you. But it depends on what industry and what product you're going after. So if you're the early stage developer and buyer of the product, that's what you look for, right? And they will help you, and if you ask them for their help. So I would just don't overpromise. You know, don't tell them it does everything. But I'm still looking for your advice on how to do this, this, and this. Will you help us? In the meantime, you get the product. I won't charge you no more for the product. You know, I need the next 3 customers. Who are they? Can you help me get them? And maybe you'll get something on those ones. But even if you don't, the topic should be, I need your help to help me get those other customers, because it'll bring more revenue in, which means I'm actually protecting your investment as well. Because the more I can generate in this thing, the more people I can hire, and the better we can do with the product overall. And that's what you really want in the end. You want me to be successful. That's how I pitch a customer, and see if they help fund some of the development. In the mid-90s, our big break, when I started getting my paycheck, was because we convinced a U.S. company wanted our product, and we convinced them over a 3-year time period to fund us $6 million to develop a product for what they wanted and have exclusivity in the U.S. And that's how we launched our company to get going, because we were able to fund the development, right, where we couldn't do it no other way. And now we're in a position where we can actually start funding some projects and some other projects that might just work out, right? We're hoping that it will.
Exactly.
And that could be a launching ground for new products for us, that we, instead of doing it all ourselves.
Perfect. Next, Mr. Keene at the back of the room.
The Keener? Okay.
So, well, in the early days, I'm assuming that you're fairly enterprise-based, internal network-driven software, and with the advent of the internet and the cloud services and new technology, how much are you taking advantage of that, and how has that had an impact on the scale of your business?
You know, we're not in a business that's the leading edge, bleeding edge, latest. I mean, ours are administrative systems for hospitals. Hospitals are known to be, a number of years behind the industry in that area. So on the hospital side, on the doctor side, electronic is the same thing. Although we are moving forward with our product faster, but I would say that we're fortunate from our position. We're not as far down the path as the latest technologies and everything. Latest web marketing is maybe some of the room are here, right? So, but we serve a customer base that is a little bit resistant to change, and those ones are not going to be the first ones in on every single latest thing. Although I will mention that now the doctors coming out of med school and the other ones that are in this year, they are so tech savvy. They're a different breed now, and they are expecting something totally different to be connected right away and using it for connecting with their patients. But the industry is holding them back. The provincial governments, what they deal with on their bureaucracy is what's holding it back. The technology is there today to actually have the doctor write a prescription and send it to the pharmacy and have you walk down and pick it up here. But the rules don't allow that yet. So in some way, we're ahead of our industry, and yet we're not as far ahead as some of the technologies that are out there that are being developed that have massive thousands of users joining per day and stuff like that. We're not in that industry. So, but we got to get there.
How much of a role has government regulations played in your ability to get your product to market? I know there was a lot of, especially in the U.S., where they mandated that so many doctors or private healthcare locations had to start using the EMR when they weren't, or they had to upgrade to a current version of their old EMR. So did you guys take advantage of that, or have you taken advantage of government regulations in that process?
Right. The question, if you can all hear it, is the government regulations has impacted or helped or hurt our business in that area. So in Canada, remember in the world, you'll see statistics on doctors that are automating, and you'll see statistics that show that Denmark is 98% automated at the primary care, which is the GPs. Brazil is ahead of Canada. I have no idea why Canada and the United States were so far behind over this last 10 years. But it's a good thing they were, because otherwise we wouldn't have a business. So they were so far behind. They're about 10 to 20% when we got into the business. They right now are somewhere between 40 to 50% of the doctors have an EMR system at this point here, which means 50% are still possible. Out there, right? So in Canada, the problem with Canada's regulation at the government level is that they come out with incentives for the doctors to buy the system, and then at the same time they try to regulate who's going to be the approved vendors. And sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it works against you. Governments have never been able to pick the winners. The marketplace will. The marketplace will eventually, but the governments tend to interfere. And so I think they hurt us more than anything than they actually helped. In the U.S., with Obamacare and pre-Obamacare even, they were offering $44,000 per doctor to get automated in an EMR system. and and there are penalties if they don't get a system in place in time. So I think the carrot of the money actually has a detrimental impact on. It's a false economy. It's not a true economy. It's like remember I said when I started selling billing systems in BC from '88 to 1991.
Yep.
It was going like ever, but then it was over, and there was no. And then the businesses started faltering in that area. And our intelligence is that there was a little while ago about 530 companies in the U.S. that were electronic health records approved vendors, and that list is now down to about 230 at this point here. So the casualties will come, and you got to look for those opportunities at that time.
What would be ideal for government to do in your industry to allow the technology to flourish?
I would say again, if you're trying to incentivize behavior, like what's a doctor going to do?
Yep.
As you're going to buy something, reward what you want the outcomes to be. It's like your kids. You got to bribe them or incentivize them for what you want the outcome to be instead of telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And same with the doctor. So if the outcome in a doctor system, I'll give you an example. Saskatchewan, all the provinces across the country pay the doctors about $30,000 over a 3-year time period to buy an electronic medical system from some approved vendor. That includes hardware, software, support for the 3 years. Saskatchewan has done it differently. Saskatchewan pays a doctor $500 a month for his basic system, but pays them $1 per patient visit, if they put the data in the system. So that's rewarding the outcomes. Are you going to do something with it, or are you just going to buy it?
Yep.
And so now they can take it to the next level. So if their programs are about chronic disease management or diabetes control, then they can take it to the next level. So how many of your patients are at this level, and what are you going to do here, right? So I would say reward the outcomes. The vendors can take care of themselves, but don't reward the vendors. Reward the end customer, and then we have to be smart enough to make sure that we can actually get that customer and keep them. And one of our core strengths is that we developed a business that has a recurring revenue model, and we have about $25 million worth of revenue that comes in every year, with or without sales.
Right.
And that's that is what saved our bacon through the lean times and keeps on coming in.
Good. Any other questions we have on here? Derek.
Really appreciated that you were very people-focused. You knew the number of people, where they were, all sorts of things. As you've grown and been created a lot of growth in the company. What are the key things you look for in a hire, and are you still involved in every hire? What's your level of touch on inbound people?
I watch them as they're coming in the door. If I'm here in Kelowna, we have two HR people here, one in Toronto. So if I'm around, I get there. The senior ones, obviously, I get to see eventually, before they get hired. It's interesting. I often will. I drink a lot of coffee, and often I'm walking back and forth and see somebody sitting in the front counter waiting, and I know it's there for an interview. So I just walk past and I said, "Hi, I'm Al. I'm the chief coffee maker." And they don't necessarily know what to take, because I'm very serious, because they're nervous and they don't know what to take. But you can sort of gauge a little bit of fire. Have they got fire? Have they got some spark? Are they intimidated? Again, it depends on the type of job they're in for. But you look for people that got some life to them, and we'll pick up a challenge and see what it's like, right? But I love watching them coming in, and of course we can't hire everybody, but the ones that do, I'm really proud of them. And I walk back there. Like, if you come, you're welcome to come visit us at Landmark 5, and I'll show you around our customer support center, and I'll take you in the back, and I'll watch how they're all on their lines, and I talk to them about them as my kids or my family, but they love it when the boss notices, and the boss notices how many calls are taken and how well they're doing. And I love getting, because I'm a fairly early morning person, and I love going to the office and about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning and sending an email back to Toronto saying, I see you're answering these calls already, because we got an online system to track the calls. And the manager says, hey, Al's watching already. Okay, so they notice that if the bosses notice. And I think that's part of it, is taking personal interest in what they're doing, and especially frontline customer support. I can't do the same for the programmers, because I don't understand them. So I can't quite interact the same way with the programmers as I can with the customer people or the salespeople. But I would say, you know, keep them interested and keep them excited, and you can do it. You can do it, right? So.
I was just, by the way, it's been fabulous. It's been amazing to listen to. You really told your history really well. It's interesting to me as a mathematician because you're a real numbers guy. I can't believe how many numbers you have coming off the top of your head. You're obviously phenomenally passionate. It's sharing your story. I can't believe that you've grown this for essentially the history of technology. And I think that you're coming out of that particular field, out of technology, which is what it's always specifically in that field. And I heard when you said that you would be interested in being some kind of mentor. Think about how many industries you've watched evolve while
Yeah.
you're inside kind of
Yeah.
technology. There's e-commerce, there's gaming, there's I'm thinking of all the things that you don't have your
Yeah.
competing. If you did mentoring around the technology, what do you find really interesting in technology now that you think that you can come and bring something?
First of all, my numbers, my nickname in school was Facts. Okay, so I used to be calculating how far the astronauts are going to the moon and back. I was a numbers guy, and I've been married 20,514,000 minutes to that lady over there. Okay, which is a little over 39 years. Okay, but I learned a hard lesson in 2001 when you know, business as a whole for the entire industry really faltered here, and I had to get good at numbers. I had to get good at the financial numbers. And you know, I just
And you
it
can't
was
BS them.
Yeah, it's
you have to
survival.
know.
It's just
Yeah.
you have to. I had to really understand cash flow and the business of there, and those numbers are the same numbers if it's a gaming business. They're more, but you know. So I think one of the things that an entrepreneur like myself is looking at the numbers quickly and being able to spot the things that they don't see because they're in the middle of it. I remember one acquisition in 2006 where they were proud about how they doubled their revenue in one year to the next year, and then they were halfway through the year, and they had already half the amount of revenue they had in the prior year. But it's pointed out to them, I said, but your expenses are at the same amount you've been in all of last year. And he was a smart business guy, and he didn't see it. He didn't see that his expenses were jumping twice as much as his revenues because they thought they had still runway. And so I think in terms of numbers and the business and the entrepreneur, like find somebody that'll spot stuff that you don't see. Like it's like when somebody comes into your house, they sense the smells of your food different than you do. They sense what they look at different than you do, right? So find the contrarian type person, even if he's there just to pick you apart. It's far better that you find somebody to do that than a shark or a angel investor or the public marketplace that just is going to be ruthless.
Right.
So, you know, find somebody that loves business, you know, and they'll do it not because it's a job to them. Right? So that's what I would look for if I was in the future looking for helpers or advisors.
Mr. Keene?
So, when you're looking for senior staff, I mean, you obviously went through a lot of growth. So, two kind of questions around the rapid growth. One, you had to give up some control. You couldn't be as involved as you wanted to be on a day-to-day. So, I want to know a little bit about how that felt as the founder of the company. And then, when you're trying to recruit senior staff to give that control to, what kind of mechanisms did you use? Did you use standard recruiting, job board postings? Was it really word of mouth because you know, you knew the business that you tried to bring in as opposed to advertising for?
I think,
That's a Jeff Keene one question, by the way. There's 5 in there, but he
yeah,
says it's just
so
one.
as far as recruiting, I think we've probably in the last, you know, 5 years probably hired a couple hundred people in total, and I think 3 of the positions were through a corporate style recruiter. 2 of them didn't work out, and 1 did. Okay, so I don't have a great track record in recruiting through recruiters. However, by looking for all the good people and asking who do you know that's good, who do you know that's good, they link it to other ones. And meeting, I'm forever looking for people. So we met Swan and other people in the audience, right? You gotta be given a little bit of hope that there's something in you, and you're looking for something that they can do that you can't do. I'm not no offense to you techies or you developers, I'm not a developer, so I'm not hanging on to my baby. Usually it's in the development area that you'll find most of that, you know, will be tough to give up on. In business, if you got lots to do and somebody else can do it, I'll just let them go with it. No, they have to deliver. And if they're not learning the business in 3 to 6 months, then you got a problem. But I have no problem in giving control to people and letting them run with it. I want them to be successful. So if you think of hockey analogy, look at our local hockey team here. The coach that's behind the bench, okay, someday if he's not the owner, he wants to also be the general manager. And he's hoping that he can find his assistant coaches or some other coach that'll be as successful or more than him. Because if he gets to be the GM, he can watch with pride what the organization is doing. If he has to come back in and take over, if he has to go behind the bench, he and the company has failed. Something's gone wrong, right? And so they're not scoring good enough, and so somebody comes in to rescue the season, right? And I'm hoping that someday I'll be able to be the encourager of the next CEO of our company and CEOs of other companies to help them through the battle that they have to deal with, and be on their side, So.
How do you keep yourself motivated when you're on the rocks? And how much of what you do is technical versus feeling?
How much of what I do is technical is very little. It has never been. It's about being able to sell it. It's about being able to provide the customer service. And I don't necessarily consider it technical as a developer as you might,
I think
but
what he's saying there is, do you go by gut? Is it more of a feel
I
thing
think
that you work by?
it is a lot of that, right? Okay, okay, but I mean, I think it is a lot of gut, okay, feel. Your gut's is usually not wrong. And you got to go by that. And that's what I've always done. It's happened, I've won more often on a hunch of good people than I failed. It's happened more often that I felt something was there in an acquisition than I failed, right? So that's part of being an entrepreneur, right? You hope you make more right decisions than wrong decisions, and if you make a wrong decision, it's a small one.
So if you make a wrong decision, or you're on the skids, like when you first moved to BC and you joined the multi-level marketing, how do you keep yourself motivated? How do you keep the faith in yourself that you're doing the right thing?
Fear is a great motivator. Survival forces people to do stuff that they don't always do, but they have to, and they got no other choice. It's either that or failure. And I remember a point in 80, when we moved here, 81, okay. I had a chance to move back to the fire department in Calgary, and I said, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep on going. And we did. I kept on going and working at it, right? So I don't know what would have happened if I would have given up and gone back. In this sector, I know that we employed a lot more people. I'm very convinced that in this town, there's at least 250 people that got their start in technology in Kelowna area with our companies, and that's something I'm extremely proud of in the local community, So, but it also depends what your personal motivation is. At my toughest time in the 2001 time period, it was all about faith, family, and friends. Those are the ones that the ones that believed in you, whatever your faith system is, whatever your personal values are. That has to drive you. If it's money that's driving you, then money comes and money goes. But it has to be the other things that make you go.
One of the things we hear of a lot is the perseverance of entrepreneurs going through those tough times. And then on the other side, we go, well, if the entrepreneur is too stubborn, then they fail. So there's kind of a fine line there, right? Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Well, I guess, each of those incidents move you forward.
Sure.
You have to step a few steps back to take another charge at it, right?
Right. And not doing the same thing the same way.
Yeah, and if you're
expecting
beating your head
results.
against the wall and it's starting to bleed, maybe you have to think of something different, right? But is there some hope someplace? Is there, I can truly say that not every successful thing that we've done has actually turned out positive long term, and not everything negative thing that's happened to us has actually been wrong for us,
right?
Because it forced you to retrench and rethink and look at it again. And I guess that's life, right? Good Lord put us on this earth to do something right and good. And as long as we keep on, as long as we keep on pounding and, keep on pounding and pounding and nail doesn't bend and the hammer doesn't break, we've got a chance.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Wagner. Last question of the night.
How long before you transfer from, it sounds like you're fairly involved in the sales side of things. How long until you pass that over? Because one of the things, especially on the tech side, you develop a product, and there comes a point where you need to take the time to do the CEO things and step back and actually not be there, but at the same time, you're trying to drive the revenue, because if you don't have the revenue, the business doesn't fold. So where do you sort of see that line, and where do you find that line in your business where you realize you have to pass that over to someone?
I think as a CEO, you have to be the best first salesman if you're starting on your own. You have to sell, whether it's investors or other people come on board or customers, you have to be the salesperson. And hopefully you'll find somebody along the way that'll want to work with you to outdo you. I would look for somebody that looking to take on that role as quick as possible, but never forget the sales part. If you get too involved in the managing of stuff, you're going to fail because you're going to look inward mostly. I can think in my first 6 years of my business, I was the only salesperson for a company, and we had 30 people. No, I probably waited too long, but I just couldn't find the people. It wasn't that I wasn't looking for it. I just didn't find the people that would work as hard at a business that was relatively slow paced, like 2 to 5 year sales cycles. So that you can't survive on today. But I look for the salespeople that can do it and pay them, they get them going.
Thank you, Al. Round of applause for Al.
Thank you.